They say guilt is the price you pay for moments you can't forget. And maybe that's true. Because it's been 2 years since that night, since everything changed. 2 years since I crossed a line I swore I never would. Since I looked into someone's eyes, someone I never should have looked at that way, and whispered the words I didn't even know were inside me. Please, don't stop. And you know what? Sometimes I still hear myself saying it. Not out loud, but deep in my head, like a memory that refuses to leave. Like an echo bouncing off the walls of a house that used to be a home. I know what you're probably thinking. How could she? Why would she? And believe me, I've asked myself the same questions over and over again. Because I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy the life I built. It just unraveled. Slowly, quietly, almost like I didn't notice it until it was too late. It started with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind, the kind that hangs between two people like fog that never lifts. My husband, Dan, he used to be my best friend. My person. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. Not in the dramatic, soap opera way. I mean literally, he stopped looking at me. No more glances across the dinner table. No more reaching for my hand in the middle of the night. No more warmth. Just routines. Bills. Work. Chores. And this ache that grew inside me like something alive. I tried, you know? I smiled when I felt like crying. I planned date nights he always canceled. I put on the perfume he used to love and watched his eyes slide right past me. After a while, I stopped trying. And that's when it started to happen. That's when someone else began to notice me. Really notice me. And the worst part? I let it happen. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone. Not because I was chasing something forbidden or exciting. But because I was starving. Starving for connection. For attention. For anything that reminded me I was still a woman, not just a wife, not just a mother, not just someone who folded laundry and asked about his day while he stared at his phone. So when the attention came from someone who should have been completely off limits, I didn't run. I stayed. And I let it fill me in places I didn't even know were empty. But this story isn't about justifying what I did. It's about how I got there. And what happened after. Because what we did, it didn't stay secret for long. And when the truth came out, it tore through everything I thought I could hold on to. Everything I thought was solid, my marriage, my self-worth, my family, it all cracked. So if you're still here, listening, if you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the woman staring back at you, if you've ever made a mistake so heavy you weren't sure how you'd carry it, then maybe this story is for you. Subscribe now if you're ready to hear the kind of stories that most people are too afraid to admit are real. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about loneliness, desperation, desire, and the kind of betrayal that doesn't just come from someone else, but from yourself. Because no matter how many times I try to forget, no matter how much time passes, I still remember the way he touched me that night. I still remember the way I begged him not to stop. And I still don't know if I regret it, or if I'd do it all over again. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold now if you're ready to uncover what lies beneath the surface of love, loyalty, and betrayal. I'm 39 years old. I've been married for 14 of those years. And for the last 5, I felt more like a ghost than a woman. It's strange how it creeps up on you, how you can be surrounded by people every single day and still feel so painfully alone. It's like you're there, physically. You're doing all the things. Laundry, grocery runs, picking up after everyone, smiling when guests come over. But no one really sees you. That's how it's been with Dan, my husband. 14 years, 2 kids, 1 house in the suburbs, and a love story that started off with so much fire, so much promise. Now reduced to silent dinners and quick goodnights. He's not a bad man. I want to make that clear. He works hard, pays the bills, keeps the house running. But somewhere along the way, the part of him that used to reach for me, that used to pull me close just because, it disappeared. He used to kiss my neck while I cooked. Now he scrolls on his phone while I speak. He used to say, "You look beautiful today," just out of the blue. Now, he barely glances at me, even when I'm standing right in front of him. And I know I'm not the same woman I was at 25. My body has changed. My skin's softer. My eyes don't shine the same way. There are days I catch my reflection in the mirror and wonder, when did I start looking this tired? But it's not the age. It's not the weight. It's the feeling of being forgotten. Of becoming invisible in the eyes of the one person who once couldn't keep his hands off you. He sleeps next to me every night. But it's like we're miles apart. He rolls over. I turn the other way. And the silence in that bed. It's louder than any fight we've ever had. There's this one memory I can't shake. A few months before everything happened. I was sitting alone in the living room. The lights were low. A jazz record was playing, something soft and sad. I had a glass of wine in one hand, just staring at the flicker of a candle on the coffee table. And I realized, this was the most intimate moment I'd had in weeks. Just me, the wine, and the silence. Dan was in the bedroom, watching some late-night news show. He didn't even ask if I wanted to join. He hadn't for a long time. And then there's Tyler. He's my son's best friend. 21. Polite. Respectful. But there's something behind his eyes. Not in a dangerous way, no. It's more like he sees things. Feels things deeply. When he talks, he listens. Not like he's waiting for his turn to speak, but like your words actually land somewhere inside him. He started coming around more often when they began working out in our garage. Weights, protein shakes, basketball drills in the driveway. At first, I barely noticed him. Just another teenage boy, growing into his own skin. But then he'd linger in conversation a little longer. Ask me how my day was, not the rushed, obligatory way, but really ask. He complimented my cooking once. Said something like, "You make everything feel cozy." I laughed it off, but inside, I held on to that. Because cozy was more than I'd felt in a long time. Then there was this one evening. I'd just gotten home from work. Long day. My feet were killing me. Dan was still at the office. The kids were in their rooms. Tyler was in the kitchen helping my son with something on his laptop. He saw me walk in. And before I could say anything, he said, "You look tired." But in a good way. Like someone who gives too much of herself. And the way he said it, it wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't inappropriate. It was observant. Soft. Like he could see straight through the mask I didn't even realize I was still wearing. That night, I sat in my bedroom long after everyone else had gone to sleep. I didn't cry, but I felt something shift inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. Longing, not just to be touched, but to be noticed, to be wanted. And the thing is, you don't realize how much you've been missing something until someone, even briefly, gives it to you. That tiny sliver of warmth, that spark in a stranger's words. And suddenly, you're awake again. The problem is, once you wake up, you can't pretend to be asleep anymore. He used to touch me like I mattered. Now, even when he rolls over at night, I don't feel his warmth. And the space between us? It keeps getting colder, while someone else's gaze keeps getting harder to ignore. And that's how it all began. Not with some big dramatic moment, but with a whisper of attention. A glance held just a second too long. And a woman, standing in a dimly lit living room, realizing she might not be as invisible as she thought. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. Nothing special. Just one of those slow days where time drags and the house feels heavier than usual. Dan was off at the office again. Something urgent. It always is these days. My son had asked Tyler to come by and help clear out some boxes from the garage. Stuff we kept saying we'd organize, but never did. Old decorations, tools we never use, memories shoved into cardboard. I'd just finished folding laundry when I walked out back to check on them. The garage door was open, the sun spilling in just enough to light the dust in the air. They were both laughing about something, some old basketball trophy they found. It felt normal, simple. For a moment, I just stood there, watching my son smile. Watching Tyler lift boxes with ease, his sleeves rolled up, his face flushed from the heat. He saw me before I realized. Turned his head and smiled, this warm, easy kind of smile that feels like it has no agenda. "Hey," he said, You need us to move anything else? I shook my head, just grateful someone's finally dealing with all that junk. He walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. And that's when it happened. So small. So nothing. But it stayed with me. He stepped closer than he needed to. And he said, "You always smell comforting." Like someone who listens. And the way he said it. Like it wasn't a compliment, but a truth. Like he wasn't trying to charm me, he was just telling me something he'd been holding in. I smiled. Laughed, actually. But it wasn't the kind of laugh that comes from joy. It was nervous. Uneasy. The kind of laugh that slips out when your body feels too warm all of a sudden and you don't know why. I brushed my hair behind my ear, trying to say something casual. "It's just an old perfume. Nothing fancy." He looked at me. Not in a way that made me feel exposed, but in a way that made me feel seen. And I felt something flicker inside me. A spark I hadn't felt in a long time. It was just a compliment, right? Just a moment. But my heart hadn't fluttered like that in years. And as he walked back into the garage, I just stood there, still, frozen, like part of me was waking up from a deep, cold sleep. The rest of the afternoon passed like nothing had happened. Boxes were moved. Laughter continued. I smiled when I needed to. Made sandwiches. Pretended. But something had shifted. I kept thinking about the way he said it. About how his voice dipped just a little when he said, like someone who listens. Like someone who understands. Like someone who cares. Later that evening, after the boys had left for a movie and the house was quiet again, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and sprayed that perfume on my wrist. Not because I needed to. Not for Dan. But because I wanted to feel that flicker again. I closed my eyes, breathed in the scent. And I remembered the way Tyler looked at me. It wasn't love. It wasn't lust. It was something more dangerous than both attention. And attention, when you've been starved of it, feels like affection. Feels like safety. Feels like desire. I tried to forget it. I told myself it was just a compliment. A passing moment. Nothing more. But the next time he came over, the way he said hello was softer. The way he handed me a cup of water lingered just a beat longer. And the way our hands brushed, accidentally, I told myself, made my breath catch for half a second too long. And that wasn't the moment I knew everything was about to change. That came later, when he touched my hand and didn't let go. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I laid there wide awake. Dan was next to me, snoring softly, one arm folded under his pillow, his back turned. Same as always. Same position. Same silence. And me, just lying there, staring at the ceiling like it held answers I didn't even know how to ask. I kept replaying it. The touch. His hand brushing mine and staying there. It was barely anything. Not even a second, maybe. But it felt like an earthquake in my chest. Like the first crack in a frozen lake just before it gives way. And I hated that it felt good. I hated that my body responded before my mind could catch up. That a boy, a man, yes, but still could make me feel something just by not letting go. And I hated myself more for the fact that Dan could roll over in bed next to me and I felt nothing. Not warmth. Not comfort. Not even resentment anymore. Just this numb, aching emptiness. So I lay there, stuck in my head, picking apart every little moment. Was it me? Was I the problem? Was it so wrong? To want someone to see me again? To feel wanted? I wasn't asking for flowers. I wasn't begging for grand gestures or candlelit dinners. I just wanted someone to look at me the way Dan used to. Like I mattered. Like I was his. But that look was gone. And Tyler was starting to look at me that way. Not with hunger or lust, no. With attention. With presence. And that was even more dangerous. Because it wasn't physical yet. It was emotional. And that kind of connection? It sneaks in. Wraps around you slowly. Until you don't even realize how deep it's gotten. The next morning, I made coffee like I always do. Same mug. Same routine. But everything felt different. I avoided my reflection. I moved through the house like I was trying not to leave traces of myself behind. Later that day, while scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself, I saw it. A message on Instagram. From Tyler. Just a few words. Thanks for today. You've got this calm energy. I like being around you. That's it. That's all it said. Simple. Innocent. Polite. But those words. They hit something in me I didn't know was still alive. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Read it once. Then again. And again. Calm energy. Like being around me gave him peace. Like I wasn't just some background noise in his day. Like I was someone, not just somebody's wife or someone's mom or a woman filling space in a quiet house. I didn't reply. I told myself I shouldn't. That replying would be the next step down a path I had no business walking. But I didn't delete it either. I left it there. Sat with it. Checked it again later. Read it again before bed. And in the smallest, most dangerous part of me, I smiled. Because after years of feeling invisible, someone saw me. And that scared me more than anything else. I told myself it was nothing. That it didn't mean anything. That I was just tired, emotional, vulnerable. I reminded myself that Tyler was young. That he probably didn't mean it that way. That I was reading too much into it. Projecting. But then I remembered the look. The way his eyes held mine. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me. The way he didn't let go of my hand. And I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Something was happening. Slowly. Quietly. And I wasn't stopping it. I should have deleted that message. Closed the app. Let it all fade into the background where it belonged. But I didn't. I kept it. Like a secret note folded into my chest. Because it made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. And that choice, that small, seemingly harmless choice, was the beginning of the end. After that message, the one he sent about liking my energy, things didn't go back to normal. Not really. He started coming around more often. At first, it made sense. My son and him were still close. Working out in the garage. Studying at the kitchen table. Laughing over basketball videos on the couch. But gradually, it started to feel like he wasn't just there for my son anymore. He'd linger after my son left the room. Ask me if I needed help carrying in groceries. Offer to fix little things, tighten cabinet hinges, carry laundry baskets upstairs, take the trash out without being asked. It was subtle, but I noticed, and I pretended not to. I told myself it was just kindness. That I was imagining the way his eyes would pause on me a little longer than they should. That I was overanalyzing the way his voice softened whenever we spoke, like he was afraid of waking something up in me too soon. But the truth? I liked it. I liked being noticed. I liked being asked how my day was, and actually being listened to. One night, it was just the two of us in the kitchen. My son had gone out to meet friends. Dan was still at work as usual. I was washing dishes, and the dishwasher, surprise, surprise, had stopped working again. Tyler offered to help. I handed him a towel and kept washing. We started talking. About nothing at first. Then about everything. I don't even remember how it shifted. But suddenly I was telling him about my life. About how Dan and I used to be inseparable. How we used to talk until 2 a.m., laugh until we couldn't breathe. How slowly, over time, that connection just faded into routines and silence. I told him things I hadn't said out loud in years. I didn't cry. Not right away. But at some point, when I was wiping my hands on a towel and avoiding his eyes, I felt one slip out. Just a single tear down my cheek. It surprised even me. And before I could turn away, he was there. Close. Too close. Reaching up, gently brushing that tear from my skin with his thumb. Not in a rushed way. In this slow, careful motion, like touching me mattered. Like I mattered. Our faces were just inches apart. And I whispered, "Don't." But I didn't mean it. Not really. And he knew it. Because I didn't pull away. I didn't step back. I just stood there. Frozen. Wanting. Terrified. We didn't kiss. He didn't try. He just looked at me. And I looked right back. The tension in that room was unbearable. It was thick, charged, silent, but not empty. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for someone to break it. But neither of us did. Eventually, he stepped back. Just a little. Said something like, I should go. And I nodded. I didn't speak. I couldn't. After he left, I sat on the floor in the dark kitchen. The house was silent, except for the broken dishwasher humming and clicking like it was trying to finish a cycle it never could. I avoided him after that. For a week, I made excuses. Told my son I was busy, not feeling well. If I heard Tyler's voice from the hallway, I stayed in my room. I didn't want to see him. I should have deleted it and reminded myself I was a grown woman with a husband, with a family, with a line I promised I'd never cross. I should have told him to stay away. But instead, I typed 4 words. I feel the same. And I hit send. The night it happened, there was a storm. Not a quiet, romantic drizzle. A real storm. The kind that rattles the windows and makes the whole house hum with electricity. The kind that turns silence into something alive. Dan was out of town, another business trip. He hadn't called. Not even a quick check-in. Just a text around 5 p.m. Landed. Long day. Talk tomorrow. I stared at that message for a while. Not because I missed him, but because it didn't even sting anymore. I made myself a glass of wine. Lit a candle on the kitchen counter, more for company than ambience. Slid into my softest sweater and tried to drown out the thunder with some music. But even music couldn't fill the quiet that wrapped itself around me. And then a knock on the door. It startled me. Not many people visit in a storm. I opened the door, and there he was. Tyler. Soaked. Hair clinging to his forehead, water dripping from his hoodie. Holding something that barely passed for an umbrella. I was walking home from the gym, he said, breathless, smiling just a little. Didn't realize the storm would hit this hard. Thought maybe I could borrow a real umbrella. I should have said no. Should have told him to wait on the porch while I grabbed it. Should have told him anything except what I did. Come in. You're drenched. He stepped inside, water pooling on the tile behind him. I handed him a towel. He pulled off his hoodie, his shirt damp and clinging to him, and for a second, just a second, my eyes lingered too long. We stood there, in the kitchen. Thunder rolling in the distance. Him drying his hair. Me pretending to check the weather app, my fingers trembling just slightly. Want a glass of wine while you wait it out? Why did I ask that? He nodded. Sure. We sat at the table. 2 glasses. 1 candle. Silence so thick, it felt like a third person in the room. I tried to make small talk. Tried to talk him out of staying. Said things like, you should probably go before it gets worse, and I don't want your mom worrying. But my voice lacked conviction. And we both knew it. He leaned back in the chair. Said nothing for a while. Then he looked at me, just looked. Not hungry. Not arrogant. Just present. And I felt it. Every cell in my body reacting to that gaze. That impossible, forbidden, perfect gaze. He stood up. Took a step toward me. I didn't move. And then, he kissed me. Soft. Slow. Like he was asking a question. I pulled away. I did. But not because I didn't want it. Because I did. God help me, I wanted it more than I've wanted anything in years. I looked at him, my breath shallow, my pulse racing, and I said, we shouldn't. But even as I said it, I wasn't stepping back. I wasn't reaching for boundaries. I was just saying what I thought I was supposed to say. And he didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just waited. Looked at me with those eyes that held so much understanding. And then I reached for him. Because something inside me broke open. All the years of being untouched. All the nights I cried silently facing the wall. All the conversations that never happened. All the I love yous that stopped coming. They rose up in me like a wave. And when he touched me again, it wasn't just skin against skin. His hands didn't just touch my body. They touched every lonely year I had endured. Every forgotten part of me. Every ache I had swallowed. Every single moment I had questioned whether I was still alive. And I whispered, please, don't stop. He didn't. Not that night. Not until our breathing slowed. Not until our bodies were quiet again. Not until the guilt drowned out the pleasure. The next morning, he was gone. I woke up alone. No sound. No note. Just the faint scent of his skin on the pillow and the aching dullness between my ribs where something fragile and wild had lived for a brief moment. The house was still. Too still. I sat on the edge of the bed, my legs trembling. Not from fear. Not from shame. But from the weight of everything that had just happened. I ran a hand through my hair, still damp with sweat, still tangled in memory. And I wanted, just for a second, I wanted to rewind time. To unsay what I said. To unfeel what I felt. But it was too late. It had already happened. The line had been crossed. And I had begged him to cross it. I stood up, barely able to find my balance. The storm outside had passed, but the one inside me had only just begun. Dan came home that afternoon. Suitcase in one hand, Bluetooth in his ear, already neck-deep in emails and half-formed sentences. He walked into the kitchen and kissed my cheek without looking up from his phone. And I flinched. Not because I didn't expect it, but because I had no idea how to receive it. That touch, that casual, routine, careless touch. It felt like an invasion. I forced a smile, poured him coffee, laughed when he told me about flight delays and airport food. I played the role. Wife, mother, steady hand. Meanwhile, inside, I was crumbling. Tyler didn't come around after that. Not that day. Not the next. Not for the rest of the week. No texts. No likes on old photos. Not even a read receipt on the message I sent him. Are you okay? Do you regret it? Can we talk? Nothing. I was haunted by that silence. Every ding from my phone made my heart leap. Every shadow outside my window made me look twice. But he didn't come. And the silence. It started to feel like a punishment. Like I was the only one carrying the weight of what we did. What if he hated me now? What if he regretted everything? Or worse, what if he told someone? I couldn't stop spiraling. At night, I lay awake, reliving every second of that stormy night. How it started. How I let it happen. How I wanted it to happen. And now? Now he was gone. And I was left with a house that felt colder than it ever had before. My son noticed it too. A few days later, we were in the kitchen, passing plates back and forth when he asked, "Have you heard from Tyler?" I dropped a fork. The sound of it hitting the tile echoed like a shot. I bent to pick it up, stalling. My voice didn't feel ready. I finally said, "I think he's just busy." Tried to keep my tone light. But my son didn't look convinced. He nodded, distracted, but I could see the confusion behind his eyes. And that made it worse. Because now it wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about Dan. It was about my son. His friendship. His trust. His innocence. And I had tangled all of it up in something that should have never happened. I told myself I'd never reach out again. That I'd let it go. That silence was safer than risking more damage. But then, a week later, my phone lit up in the middle of the night. I wasn't even asleep. I was lying there, staring at the ceiling like I had been for days. It was from Tyler. Just 4 words. "We need to talk." He messaged me at 2:13 a.m. "We need to talk." Just 4 words. But they echoed louder than anything I'd heard all week. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen, my hands cold, heart pounding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask him why he disappeared, why he left me in silence, swimming in guilt and confusion while he vanished like it never happened. But instead, I waited until morning. Typed a simple reply, "When?" He said noon. At a little cafe we both knew. Neutral. Quiet. Safe. I wore a simple sweater and jeans. No makeup. No perfume. I didn't want to be seen that day, not as a woman, not as anything. I just wanted to be less. When I arrived, he was already there. Sitting near the window, fidgeting with the edge of his cup like he was trying to rub the guilt off his fingers. He looked up, met my eyes for a second, then looked away. I sat down. Neither of us spoke right away. He finally said, "I'm sorry." His voice was low, flat, like the words had been rehearsed. I waited, then he said it. "I think we made a mistake." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just nodded, as if my body had already prepared itself to be dismissed. I care about you, he continued. I respect you. Too much to let it go any further. Too much to let it go further? Was that supposed to comfort me? I forced myself to breathe evenly, tried to keep my face calm. But inside, I felt everything unraveling. Respect. That's what he called it. I wanted to ask him, was I just a fantasy to you? Was I something to prove to yourself? Was I a conquest before you moved on to someone your age? But I didn't say any of it, because the answer wouldn't matter. Not really. He looked at me again, like he was waiting for forgiveness. But I had nothing left to give. I told him to take care. And I walked out. No hug. No closure. Just air that suddenly felt too cold for spring. I went home. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. I passed through the living room, saw Dan sitting on the couch, TV remote in hand, half watching a news segment he probably wouldn't remember 5 minutes later. He looked over at me, smiled like nothing had ever changed. Like I was still the woman he married. Still his. And I looked at him. And I thought, maybe I was always invisible. Maybe that's why I let myself be seen by someone I should have never looked at that way. Not because I didn't love Dan, but because Dan forgot how to love me. Or maybe I forgot how to love myself. I don't know anymore. I stood in the hallway that night, watching Dan from the shadows. He looked so familiar. And so distant. Like a photo that's faded at the edges, still recognizable, but no longer sharp. And I thought about telling him. About everything. But I didn't. Not that night. And maybe not ever. Some truths. They're too heavy. Too destructive. Too rooted in moments that don't fit into explanations. Some truths are better left unsaid. But the silence? The silence has its own weight. It lingers. It grows. And it wraps itself around you like a second skin you never asked for, but can't take off. So, did I tell Dan? Did I end my marriage? I don't know how to answer that. What I do know is this: you can love someone and still betray them. You can feel alive and still be drowning. You can make a mistake and still want to make it again. And when you do, when everything cracks open, you're left holding pieces that don't quite fit together anymore. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own marriage? Like no matter how much you do, how hard you try to keep the house warm, the kids cared for, the conversations alive, you're still fading. Have you ever looked at your partner across the room and realized they haven't really seen you in years? And then someone else comes along, not to sweep you off your feet, not to fix your broken heart, but just to notice you, to listen when you speak, to make you feel like you matter again, even if it's wrong, even if it's dangerous. What would you do? Would you walk away? Would you tell someone? Would you silence that longing or let it speak? Tell me in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. Should I have told Dan? Was I just weak? Or was I finally human? Because I don't know anymore. And maybe that's why I'm telling this story. To find out if someone out there understands. If this story touched something in you. If it reminded you of something you felt or feared or lived through, please like the video. Leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes just knowing that someone heard you, that someone saw you, it changes everything. Your voice matters here. And maybe, together, we can make sense of the pieces we're left holding. Desire doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't knock politely. It doesn't ask if now is a good time. It creeps in, through the cracks of routine, through the silence between words. And it blooms in the places where love has gone quiet. That's the danger no one warns you about. We think affairs start with temptation. But more often, they start with neglect. A touch that never comes. A word that isn't said. A gaze that looks right through you. And slowly, you begin to hunger. Not just for sex, but for presence. For warmth. For someone to say, I see you. I hear you. You're not alone. And when that hunger goes unspoken for too long, it becomes desperation. Desperation makes you justify things. Makes you rewrite your own story just enough to feel okay doing what you never thought you'd do. That's what happened to me. And maybe Maybe if Dan had looked up from his phone one night and really looked at me, maybe this wouldn't be a story I'm telling now. Maybe it would have been nothing more than a quiet moment that passed. But it wasn't. Because communication matters. Attention matters. Touch matters. We don't just fall out of love, we starve in it. And by the time someone else offers us water, it's too late to ask whether they're the right person to take a drink from. Some moments, they break you. Others awaken you. And sometimes, you can't tell which is which until it's too late. So no, I don't have a perfect ending. I don't have a lesson wrapped in a vow. What I have is a story. One I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And maybe that's the real lesson. That sometimes, the damage isn't what you did, but what you felt right before you did it. And the silence that comes after.